Aloha, ladies and gentlemen. Jeremy Vaeni here, and you're listening to Our Undoing Radio. I feel like I maybe owe you an apology that I didn't. I've got like two more of these to do. Well, one more after this to complete the season. And I skipped a week because my mom came into town and stuff. I'm tired. But I don't ever really skip a week when I do these, or at least I don't think I have. Up until now, so sorry. But I did launch last Thursday my Substack free book that I'm releasing every chapter. I'll have a link to it in the description. It's called Barely Told Book of Life. So if you want to go to Substack, if you're not reading the description now, you can just look up my name or look up Barely Told Book of Life and subscribe. And once a week in your email, you'll get a new chapter to that book for free. I'm not doing a whole lot of advertising for it. It's just whoever really cares, I guess, will sign up for it, or whoever stumbles into it on Substack will get a free book out of the deal, I guess. Why not, right? I'm still exhausted, by the way. I don't know if you can tell in my voice. Besides family in town, we've been dealing with sick pets. Alfie, our cat, was ill for a while. Now he's better. And one of our ducks, Chocolate, I was pretty sure was going to die yesterday. Said my goodbyes just in case, but she's still kicking. And that may be because I've been meditating her. Maybe something else. I don't know. She's certainly not eating. But she's been bad for the last few days. She was her worst yesterday, and then this morning she was quite a bit better, actually. So, I don't know if I'm helping or not, but I'm going to keep it up, just because it can't hurt, right? But I also know, as Carol has reminded me, that we've seen it before where animals and people tend to get better for a minute, and then you think, hot diggity dog, they're all better, and then they collapse. So it could be that, or she could be getting better. We don't know. Flip a coin. Coin flip. Pendulum. Yeah, I'm making a transition here. So enough of all that, right? Let's talk about something happy, like how we're at war in Iran. Or Iran. Is it Iran or Iran? It's probably Iran. Nevertheless, on Our Undoing Radio and OurUndoing.com, and just in life in general, whenever I speak about so-called spirituality, I remind you that what I am talking about is getting off of the swinging pendulum between good and bad decisions, the miracle that is free will, where you can live in confusion and ignorance and make the best out of it through decisions that come in the form of thoughts. Or you can stop all that by seeing the uselessness of it, by seeing that it isn't human nature to be this way, that in fact it's a colossal mistake and at this point, I mean, obvious mental illness, and that any move you make toward the good and the true is just a move toward the bad and the false, waiting to happen. And, I say these things, and I don't know how receptive you are as a listener to them, but are you not seeing it now? I mean, it is like we are, in life, pro wrestling. In pro wrestling, you got the good guys who are the baby faces, and you got the bad guys who are the heels. And every now and then, the baby face does a heel turn, and then eventually the heel does the baby face turn, and on they go, refreshing their characters through being good guys and bad guys, and refreshing audience interest. I don't know what audience we're playing to, but we, in life, seem to do the exact same thing. And, America and Israel are the last two nations you might expect would turn fascist, but here we are. fascist warmongers destroying democracy, making a mockery of the world. We both did heel turns, right? And we may do face turns eventually. Enough people may rise up and try to undo some of this stuff, or try to take the countries back, whatever it is, and may succeed, eventually will. But that just means there's more fascism waiting in the wings, however many decades it takes to get back there. We tend to build up in one way and then tear it down, and build up in another way and tear it down. And we want to say that we're evolving, but you can see that we're not. Like, everything is a house of cards, and it's not just politics. It's like you see with Iran, with the fact that we have built up this war machine in America to fight a Cold War with $1 weapons that are top of the line, that are actually ineffective in the wars of today, where you can just have like a $30,000 to $50,000 drone that can take out infrastructure that will bankrupt the global economy in the form of oil, but also the salinity plants in the Middle East, in these countries. If they decide to take those out and they are successful, then there's no more fresh potable water in the Middle East. It's over. I mean, everything is just so fragile and precarious. And of course, I knew that about politics and about the psyche and the flipping back and forth heel turns. But I did not know that about everything else, about our economy, about our water systems, even about the grid going down, like all the stuff you think there are fail-safes for, and all it can just be wiped away with a couple of good shots. It's like we have turned the Earth into the Death Star, and all you need is the one lucky pilot to shoot into the vent and blow up the whole thing. That's kind of what we got going on here in a multiple respects, right? It's crazy. And so what are we to do if we can't get off this crazy ride, through the ride? All we can do is change up the cars on the ride, make it a little less bumpy for a while, and then we're right back. And it's the same thing with everything. I mean, it's not just even those two things. Like, if you think about, I just remember growing up, the lie that we told ourselves about progress, about scientific progress. And the bubble, we talk about these bubbles that we get in, and the bubble that we were in was like that this was forward-thinking progress that is unstoppable. And now the people who in the sciences who are still trying to sell us on the unstoppability of whatever their projects are like the tech bros who are trying to sell us our own death and our own enslavement by telling us that's inevitable evolution, right? But science as a whole was the inevitable evolution. It was coming out of religion. It was bringing us into rationality and logic and not so much emotionality anymore. And we're going to really figure out how the world really works and how everything really works. And we're going to have a real foundation. And it turns out that no, most of the world is still religious. And beyond that, large factions of millions of people are really stupid and proud of it. And they seize control every now and then just throw us right back into the so-called Stone Age, right? So there is no real forward momentum, not really. And, it all makes sense to me in the hour and doing terms. It's just I hadn't really seen the extent to which it's true until now. Until we created Idiocracy without any of the lovable characters, essentially. But here we are. And just incidentally, it got me back to thinking about that dolphin dream I had in 2011 before I moved to Hawaii. That was, the dolphin in Kealakekua Bay, who was clearly not a dolphin. Clearly, to me, it was a communication from some other intelligence telling me to get here and plant my roots and all that, and showing me that there's going to be some catastrophe in the east coast of the U.S. and everyone's going to migrate to the west, and, it's not going to work out. In the middle of the country, I think due to natural, like, tornadoes and storms and things. And they're going to keep moving to California, and then they're going to want to go elsewhere, but the grid's going to be down, planes are going to be down, they're not going to be able to go anywhere. And in 2011, it didn't really make sense to me that, why couldn't they go to, like, Mexico or Canada? And then when Trump got into office the first time in 2016, it made a little more sense, and now it makes all the sense in the world. Right? And also, how does the grid collapse in America, the greatest, richest, most powerful nation on the planet? Oh, because the truth is we've probably been coasting and resting on our laurels like every great, quote-unquote, civilization. You can put both those words in quotes. We're ripe for collapse because our arrogance and our laziness have made us complacent, but also because the pendulum isn't real, and so it has to collapse. Everything always has to collapse back in on itself. It's just the way of the world on the pendulum. So that all does make sense to me. And we're seeing it. We're seeing what the possibilities really are. It's not so crazy anymore, is it? The crazy part is I don't see what's in Hawaii that's going to make it get any better, survive. Like, why here? But I guess I'll find that out. So stay tuned, if there is a tuned to stay. So as I have been writing this barely told book of life, I've stumbled into maybe a better way to look at this problem. Or, I don't know, maybe this will make it clearer for you. One question is, if you accept the premise that this bumbling, pendulum swinging, groping for power nonsense stuff we do is not human nature, but just a thing that we call human nature to not have to discover our true human nature, why is it that we're not born whole? We're not born our entire nature in the way that everyone around us is. All the plants and animals appear to be. Why not us? And maybe one way to look at it is that those animals, especially the ones that are, it's easy to see if you're born into an egg or a larval stage that you go through, and then into a pupal stage or pupa stage, and then you come out a whole other being. Like, all of those stages are physical, and you can see them, and so there they are. And with humans, it's like, we have physical growth, but we have psychological development that actually mimics that sort of larval transformation. But because it's invisible to us, obviously we don't see it, and so we don't really know about it. What's obvious to us is growth. And so we think that when we grow from childhood to adulthood, that's all we do. And everything that we do is within that continuum or within that spectrum. And when we look at other animals who are mammals, who are not of eggs and larvae and whatever, they do that too. And they seem to be in their wholeness. So again, why aren't we? And I think because we are an amalgamation of all that is Earth in a way that other animals are not, I think we have this other side to us, the egg side. Not just being an egg inside a womb, but we have a metaphorical egg side to us, a metaphorical, instantaneous, Well, it's not so metaphorical at this point, but an instantaneous transformation that we need essentially to crack out of our psychology. So what we see and what we know and what we have developed all of our science around is this growth process out of, babyhood, childhood, adulthood. But what if coming into adulthood, there is a certain maturity level that we need to reach where we then we peck out of, however you want to call it, chew out of the cocoon that is our psychology. That is the psychological me. That is thought. Right? Do we need to, can you see that? Is that easier to see that we need to chew our way out of the cocoon that we are still in, which is thought? And when we chew out of that, that becomes our wholeness. There be truth. There be that which transcends and includes thought. I mean, it's not totally like a chicken or a fly, like they chew out or they peck out, however it is that they leave their cocoons, and they've developed into something else that they can then leave the shell behind. And we don't necessarily leave the shell that is our psychology behind. We do in the moment of nothingness, but then in the moment of back to thingness, we have transcended and included that shell, that sense of self. So the architecture of the self is still there, but the juice running it, the energy running it, isn't the brain, isn't thought. It is truth. It is formless awareness that exists prior to and inclusive of thought, prior to and inclusive of the brain, prior to and inclusive of you. And is that easier to see? Because that's the truth, man. That's what this is. That's what we are missing here. It's tempting to want to do another revolution or do a civil war or whatever these things that we fantasize about. They're going to get us back on track. But there's no getting us back on track. It's the wrong track to begin with. There's nothing in our personal lives that can compare to the impersonal. And I don't mean impersonal like, aloof and cold. And I mean, for instance, love, which transcends and includes you, is always going to be the greatest, fullest expression that there is. And just try putting that up against personal love, impersonal love, or transpersonal, if you want to call it that, love. Doesn't include any of the things that we wrongly define love with, like jealousy and hatred and possession and desire and all that stuff, we either include that in our definition of love or we ignore the fact that we include that in our definition of love. And then we, go around in denial, and then we build up these resentments and these hatreds and these anxieties and these disorders through the repression. So we either act out on it and we're, horrible, or we repress and we're horrible to ourselves and then to others. Right? Like, this is what we do. And so how do we not be that anymore? How do we stop putting truth on this idealistic pedestal that is for but a handful of ancient dead Messiah types or Buddhist types or whatever, but it's not to be us, and that anyone who says it's us is just selling you some crap, is just another psychotic or sociopath trying to sell you snake oil. Like, how do we get to the truth of it and be done with that? Well, one way is to just see it. Maybe it's the only way, is to just see it as, for instance, I am pointing it out, and then on your own, sit with the question, sit with that, and not make it a social affair, not make it like a book club or a church or a Zoom call with your friends where you discuss it forever and ever and ever. And, whoa, what does this mean? What does that mean? Oh, that sounds like what this Zen master said. Oh, that sounds like, oh. Because that's more of the pedestal. And you may feel like you're evolving. You may think like you're getting somewhere, but you're not. You're just recontextualizing your identity as one who is interested in or knows, has knowledge about these things, these topics. And if you just see that, if you just see what a trap you are to yourself, that's it. There is no next step. There is no next stepping off the pendulum, chewing your way out. The seeing it is the chewing. The seeing it is the stepping out. The seeing is the stopping point, the death of self. Really seeing you as you are. Seeing you for what you are. Seeing what thought is and that you are thought. Because the other, I would say, meta problem that we are encountering and on the precipice of not exactly living through is the environmental collapse that we are creating with our lifestyles, right? Into which a lot of this, if not all, of this insanity that we're living in is a reaction to. I mean, if you're sick and you do sick things and you act out in sick ways, you're going to get sick results every time. There is no magic formula in sickness where you end up in health. The health is that you die, and therefore the sickness doesn't spread anymore. Or you, to get healthy, you have to do healthy things. You have to be healthy to be healthy, right? It seems so obvious, but you have to, in the way that we think of it, you have to do healthy things to be healthy. But in terms of this spiritual stuff we're talking about, or this wholeness stuff, it's really just, it's being it. Which doesn't mean stop being unhealthy. It means see that you are unhealthy, and in seeing it, there becomes a clarity that is health. The clarity becomes you. It's just an aha moment that's like, oh. But also you are no more. I mean, okay, it's a little more than an aha moment. There's also nothingness, and that is also you, or not you, as it were. But fancy word games aside, I hope you're seeing how true this is. Like, it's not just you listen to this because you find it interesting, or you want to know what it's about, or you want to compare it to other things. Like, this is it. All the other things are thought constructs. They're all BS. They're nice tries. They're, and some of that is charlatanism, and of course. But much of it is not. Much of it is very real things, almost tangible things that you can hook into and feel like you're climbing a hierarchical consciousness scheme and getting somewhere. But it's really just what thought does with truth, which is turn it into what I've been calling like a carnival ride, or a false hierarchical structure that you feel like you're climbing and getting somewhere, when really all you're doing is rearranging the chairs on the Titanic until the iceberg. And really, I don't know how we don't see this anymore. I really don't. It's getting really, I mean, of course, I would say that, but it just feels like it should be really difficult for you to be in denial anymore of this. I mean, just look around. Even at any of the people who claim to be enlightened, or, claim to have, I don't know, someone sent me this really stupid system of ritualization around music and psychedelics that is basically like, if you just listen to pop music and do drugs, you can sort of have a disciplined vision of what happens next. Like, you can shape it through set and setting. You can mold it into something that everyone can experience. And it's not just willy-nilly highs and lows of psychedelia. Well, that's great, except you're still a jerk, right? Like, at the end of the day, you're still a jerk, or you're still a poser, or you're still, like, whatever you are, or a good person, whatever it is, you know? I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, do you see that these people don't end up good people? Or better, best people. They don't end up... They're not Buddha. They're not Jesus running around here, right? These are just people trying to figure things out and succumbing to their own highs and lows of narcissism. And that's it. And I'm really also, I feel, validated in this as I finish up reading The Serpent's Tail, the Kundalini book I've been telling you about, which you should go read if you were so interested. How the reason that no one has any like solid definition of what Kundalini is or what it does is because nobody has a really solid definition for what Kundalini is or does. It's like, really, it's just been so, it's so bastardized and morphed over the years from one thing to the next that can be sold. Some of which is based on ancient tradition, and some of it is just made up, and some of it is whatever. That we don't really, there's no good definition for it anymore. And it's not that these things don't work. Like the Yogi Bhajan cult, they've got their yoga, which is still super popular. And it's not that the yoga doesn't produce effects in the body. It's just that it's not Kundalini. And I can say that because I'm alive with this. But you can't know that. And in fact, like at some point it becomes valid to say, well, Jer, how do you know it's Kundalini? Because there's no definition, right? And it's like, we're so screwed up. We're so screwed up. And it's all because we've taken truth and the after effects of the death of self, and we've turned them into carnival rides in the circus of mind. We've turned them into thought constructs, sometimes for money, sometimes accidentally, sometimes with the best, most altruistic purpose of all, which is like, well, I went through this, I know it's rare, and you're probably not going to get there. So for you, I'm going to give you some rules, and we're going to call these truths, and we're going to call these ways, and whatever. They may be alive, living rules, living disciplines after the fact, after the death of self. They may come directly from the source of truth with a capital T. But once they hit the thought, they die. They become truths. They become something that you think about and something that you do robotically or whatever. And so they are necessarily not the same thing anymore. They're dead. Truth is dead. And it's the same thing with Kundalini. I've been telling you that Kundalini is the will of silence. But what happens when Jer, my will, takes back over, and I decide to start putting these things on paper and selling them to you, and they will have an effect, but they won't be real, and they won't deliver you to a Kundalini awakening, because they can't, because only death of self brings you there. Only death of self makes it the case. It's even hard for me to say the right words all the time to describe this, right? Nevertheless, plunge on, forge on. This is the problem, or these are the two problems. The problem of the pendulum and the running on a hamster wheel, but thinking you're evolving and going somewhere. And the other is that the universe provides plenty of cover for itself, plenty of lies, plenty of paths and ways of doing things that will make you believe you're not on a hamster wheel. And a lot of those come from people who have experienced, or people who are living as, truth, who bring it back and share it in a way that immediately makes it not truth anymore, immediately makes it the property of the universe, of thought. And so, yes, it has real effects, but those effects are not actually helping you chew out of the cocoon, even though they claim that that's what they're here for. They're not here for that. They're here to add on to the cocoon. It's more of the thought bubble, more of mind stuff to have to see through. And I guess if this is still too hard to believe, or if you just don't want to believe it, well, just keep going. Keep going with what we're doing. And we will all be dead within, I don't know, I was going to say 10 years, but really like maybe 10 months. In America, at least, we probably won't have a democracy anymore. Not that we really have one now, but, when you say that, it's like, it can always get worse, and it sure is about to if you're not careful. So we do need room to breathe, folks. I mean, we can't lose everything to people who want to enslave us or kill us. Right? Like, we do need enough room in our within this thought bubble, within society, to maneuver and breathe and figure this stuff out, figure ourselves out. So we can't give up on the project of not allowing them to enslave us, right? Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's a house of cards and so collapse it or whatever. This is all inevitable, so just give in. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that, well, it's the same thing I've been saying all along, which is, if we're going to live in this false sense of human nature, if we're going to live in these fake societies, pretending to go somewhere when we're not, and all that, then we might as well live not our best life. I was going to say that, but live the best that we can. Be best, as Melania would say. Be the best that we can to each other, not club each other over the head, not try to take everyone's countries over at a whim, not try to quote-unquote own each other online. Let's stop with all the being trash people and just allow ourselves to live our lives and figure this stuff out. Unfortunately, I have to say, or not figure it out, because odds are, right? Not going to happen. Odds are, most people aren't listening to this, or ever going to listen to this, or ever hear what I'm saying, even when they do. But that's on them. You are listening to this. So who are you? And how much stock do you put into who you are? Because I can almost guarantee that everyone listening to this right now is anxious and afraid and thinks the world is going crazy. And the world is. I mean, it's crazy. It's been crazy, and it's going crazier. But if you're feeling all of that, do you really feel hopeful that you can turn it around? And be honest about that, because I am certain that most of you won't admit this, but believe that you can turn it around enough to where you're comfortable again, so that you don't have to pay attention to the world anymore, the politics and how the sewage system works, right? How the grid can just collapse, and like, you don't want to think about any of that stuff. You're not a specialist in any of that, unless you are, but you're probably not. You just want to live your life and go back to sleep. But I'm here to remind you that you're already asleep. So do you want that dream to be a nightmare the entire time? Or do you want it to be like kind of a nice dream, a pleasant dream, that you have a shot of waking up out of? It's harder to wake out of a nightmare because you're busy like fighting for your life. Metaphorically. I say that because in an actual nightmare, I tend to wake right up. So maybe that's a terrible example, but hopefully you understand. Yeah. We are, in fact, all screwed. But we were always destined to be screwed, because that's what the pendulum's about. And so the question isn't how do I unscrew myself? I mean, yes, work on that project, but also walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. Also work on the project of sitting alone and being silence and seeing if that transformation isn't instantaneous the moment you are real about you, what you actually are.